And we are recording. Hello, I am Katie Tupling in conversation with Jody, who might be over there or might be over there. I'm not quite sure where she is. And for those who've been watching with me talking to Rachel and to Miranda, I've abandoned the kitchen, a strange room in the house where food appears from, not by me, and I've reclaimed my space in the study because it's nice and quiet this morning, and the kinder, well, the husband and the child are downstairs somewhere being quiet. So Jody, you get to see a bit of my bookcase, the bit.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and the hidden one over there with all the mess behind it. And I'm admiring the icons behind your head. You've got Rublev's Trinity, the Madonna.
Yes, yeah, a Madonna one. So it was from a museum shop in Cyprus a few years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
And I'm liking
the Trinitarian thing and the incarnation thing.
It's beautiful, set against the blue background, which is either the sky or very kind of Madonna blue. So I'm liking the whole thing. It's not busy, but it's thoughtful, it's peaceful. I'm just wittering now. Jody, tell us about life before COVID, your role, your wider roles, your family, your household. Go for it. Who are you?
Who am I? That's a good question, but we'll answer not so sort of esoterically. So yeah, I'm Jody Stowell, and I'm the vicar of St Michael and All Angels in Harrow Weald, where I've been for just over 6 years. I've been in Harrow since I was ordained, actually, so I did my curacy here as well. I mean, I love Harrow. Harrow is hugely multi-religious, multi-ethnic, but also it has a lot of people who've kind of lived here all their lives, so it has a kind of transient feel sometimes, but also one where people are really rooted.
A long story.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of marked in the congregation that I have, and you know, they've really wanted to be a congregation which has kind of connected with the community, have been outward focused, and I think that was one of the reasons that I was the kind of right vicar at the right moment for them, because I'm quite nomadic. I've moved around a bit. I haven't been born and bred in Harrow. And so I think I was able to help them do what was their sort of heart's desire. I inherited a building project when I came. Yeah, I know. I always said I'm never going to a church with a building project, but you know what God does with that.
And God laughed into his sleeve.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, I started there in 2014. And within sort of 3 years, the building had really changed, and you know, they were it was much more able to be open to the community, and that was something that the congregation had really wanted, and I think the building now enables that. And I was so delighted in 2017 we had our PCC, just looking at November 2017, that we would sort of officially be an open church, so our doors were open and unlocked 9 to 5 every day. That's part of our identity. So where we're at now is just sort of anathema, really.
It's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, of the church. So that's who I am in Harrow, Vicar of St Mike's, and but I'm also elected as the clergy chair for the Diocese of London.
Wow,
so,
I feel like I should tug my forelock.
If you don't know what that is, I should say, because I didn't really know what that was until I
became it.
Until I became it. No, absolutely. Some of these roles and structures seem quite far away, often from the parish priest on the ground. But I thought it was actually quite important to have a sort of ordinary, for want of a better word, parish priest in that role. So
And home life?
So I'm married, and I have 2 older teens, so a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, and
how is that possible? You're only about 12 yourself.
Yeah. No, no, I'm not. But yeah, so we've got one at uni and one who will go into year 13 in September.
As and when that comes
and we're
out.
all here together now.
Okay. And obviously, you know, pre-COVID, you know, go to work, come home, go to school, come home, university, come home, blah 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 blah. And then COVID crept along, and I know for some households there was a pre-government conversation about what might it mean, what do we put in place, how long will it last, and then for others, watching carefully what the government was saying and saying, well, I'll wait till I'm told. And then for others, a letter or a text in our household first that said, aha, you are special. You have the wonderful word shielding. So tell us about the shielding conversation. How did that come about? Who's the one for whom the letter dropped, and what did the household discuss?
Yeah, well, it was interesting actually, because we started in lockdown kind of before lockdown in this house, and that was because, well, there were two reasons. So I think I hadn't been out of the house since the 16th of March. On Monday this week I did take a walk to the post box.
How did that feel?
Exciting. You know, I thought I was going to be really nervous. So when all this started, I remember saying to a friend, because we were self-isolating initially because of symptoms, and I'd been in contact with somebody who got symptoms. I did the whole track and trace isolate thing before before it was ever a thing. So that was right at the beginning, and I said, I think maybe I need to take myself out at this point. But yeah, so we were in that sort of situation, and I remember saying to a friend, once my 14 days are up, I need to make sure that I go out the front door, because I can already feel how easy it is to just never go out again. You know,
and anxiety and just getting used to being indoors, and just in case.
Absolutely. I now can totally see how that happens. But actually, so I went with my youngest, my 17-year-old, to the post box, and we did have our face coverings on. That did, you know, I felt, you know, regardless of exactly what the science says about them, that made me feel better. And you know, the road wasn't busy. It's a road I know really well. I know that I can cross it. I know that it's not very busy with cars, so I could go into the road if we needed. So I think probably all those things together helped with that. But I was glad I wasn't, you know, a bit of a gibbering wreck doing it. I think I would be if, I know we can't at the moment, but you know, if I needed to go to a supermarket or a shop, you know, I think
that's a whole different ball game.
I would find that really, really difficult. So I know there's lots of people who do have to do that and also feel anxious about it, even if they're not shielding. So. But yeah, so the 16th of March, I became aware that I'd been in contact with somebody who then had symptoms. So I said, look, you know, I think, you know, at that point the churches had been announced that they were the buildings were closing. So I thought I can do what I need to do from where I am, so I will. And then I think a few days later, my youngest got a cough and didn't actually seem to get a fever, but seemed to get just a very hot flush.
Okay.
And so then kind of rushed upstairs and said, you know, I'm staying in my bedroom for 2 weeks now, basically.
That's actually,
yeah, but also there's an anxiety thing there, because we knew that even though we hadn't had a letter yet, we just knew there was going to be an issue for my husband, who is the one who got the letter. So, but at that point, my husband, you know, it was, you know, in those early days, it feels like such a long time ago, and we feel like we know a lot more about the seriousness of it. We've gone through it a bit more as a nation. But my husband was a bit like, this is ridiculous, you know, we should be going out, why are we not going out? And I was like, look, we're actually self-isolating now, and we had been given that if you've got any symptoms you have to stay in for 14 days. Even though we were looking at my youngest going, I don't think it was anything. But then I was like, but everybody says that, that's the whole point, everyone says
widespread.
That. You know. So but then at the end of that week we went into lockdown. And then I think 5 days later or something. So we got the letter first.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband has a complex heart condition with an unknown pathology. He's special in all kinds of ways. And so yeah, and I think that was a bit of a shock for him, even though we knew he was at the very least an underlying condition sort of person. To actually have it in that black and white and to be instructed was a bit of a shock, but I think it was also helpful. Because it wasn't just sort of slightly overprotective and wifey kind of going on about it.
A mother's paranoia is actually in there in black and white. You can go, see, I told you.
Yeah.
So what changed for you? How did you decide to shield as a house, or did your husband shield in one room and you just visited now and again?
So once we'd got out of all our kind of self-isolating little bubbles, we decided we would shield together as a household, because I mean, as we were in lockdown at that point, actually that's easier, because there was no need, schools were shut and uni had finished or was very much totally online, and obviously the church buildings are shut and that kind of thing. So that was just a very easy decision initially. It's become more complex as we've gone along the weeks, but it was just we're in this together, and actually very, very grateful for having quite a large back garden, which I have worn a groove into, doing my 10,000 steps a day or whatever, round and round.
You walked a labyrinth, couldn't you? And then you'd have had a labyrinth in your
You'd have done that, but we have a tennis table in the middle.
So yours and lockdown list. So how's it been being a priest from home rather than a priest out there? How's that changed for you? Is it better or worse, or just different?
All of those things. All of those things together. It was really interesting initially. So I always, you're right at the beginning, I feel like I'm a week ahead of everything that's going on. So before the buildings were closed, I could see what was coming, I guess. And so we live streamed the last service that we did in church. And I bought a tripod, because initially I thought, well, lots of people won't be wanting to come. And then it was very quickly, none of us are going to be here for a little while. It was funny because it's on the side. So that my first live streaming gig was like that. And then obviously we so I had some technological equipment, but mostly it's my smartphone with the tripod. That's basically what I use. And I really loved, our first service in lockdown. We've got one of my commissioned lay ministers is also one of my musicians, and we had so because I could see what was coming, we had printed out worship at home liturgies for the service before the buildings closed, so people had that at home. We sent it out by email as well and all that kind of stuff. So she actually ran the liturgy, she did that. And now I think the first one I wasn't necessarily involved with at all. Yeah. Well, this is it. So
anti-clericalism.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been a big thing for me, is trying to make sure that so participation is a really high priority for us at St. Mike's. And I always think of the Nadia Bolz-Weber, sort of high participation, low excellence sort of idea. So it's really important that everybody's involved, and thinking, oh gosh, actually this medium that we're now using could lend to a more clerical, less participation. So trying not to do that. So she's actually been really involved in the online live streaming stuff. We've recently moved to having some pre-records as well, because one of our other lay ministers, who's a musician, has young children and finds it less stressful to do the pre-record stuff. So we've got
a bit of both.
A sort of variety of things. But initially I felt like, gosh, this is great. It really levels the church. So, you know, we're all in this together, you know, to use that phrase. We're all having to do it like this. We're all in our studies, in our kitchens, in our wherever we are. And it just felt like a great leveler. So some of the conversations that had been going on around ministry, around larger churches, smaller churches, local, you know, all these kind of conversations that we're all having, it just suddenly felt like that means nothing anymore. We're all in our study.
Yeah, we're all with
and
doing our best.
I felt totally liberated by that. Yeah, I felt that it was interesting. I just thought, yeah, none of that stuff means anything anymore. Guys, we're all here, and we all have a platform.
Yeah.
So
not so much now. I'm guessing that there's a real sense now that lockdown began to self-lift as people started going to the beaches, going, well, none of us are dead yet. And then the Dominic Cummings thing, as it became public, and people saying, well, if he can, so can I, because I'm fairly fit and healthy. And then government policy seeming to follow practice rather than the other way around. I don't know about you, but it feels like there's a kind of a spreading out now. We're all in together here, but suddenly there's a different speed of different people, and I'm guessing Shielders are feeling a little bit like, hello, we're at the back, and not quite so in together. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it began to sort of happen around the conversation about sort of opening churches at various levels, whether clergy going into their churches or whether opening churches for individual prayer or public worship. I know we're not there yet, but yeah, around those kind of conversations, around the conversations about how we feel about the domestic space in worship.
Yep.
So that all, you know, became okay, so but actually I don't have a choice about that.
Yes.
So, you know, it would have been nice and I think really useful for us as a church to be able to sit a little bit longer than we did with some of those theological questions, you know, about what the domestic space is. But then, as you say, the weeks went on, the push to be more kind of out there in that space became more sort of urgent and immediate for people. And so that sort of sense of it's okay, we're all in lockdown, so there's that great leveler, has definitely changed. And I guess that has caused me some anxiety as we've done that, because I don't know how much that we're thinking about that cohort, especially amongst the clergy. So what does it mean for our churches when actually we have to be at home? And there's a bit of me that thinks there's something really valuable about being at home, but we're a little bit unable to have that conversation now, because, you know, so I'm not saying that that if I could go out, I wouldn't, kind of thing, or I wouldn't go to church if I could, or I wouldn't open up, you know, all those kind of questions. But I do want us to have a bit of a wider conversation around some of the stuff we're doing online, which isn't just because you have to.
Yeah, it might be choice rather than necessity. On Twitter, I was berated by a charming young man and some of his followers who were equally charming. And I was, apart from using the language lady priestess, which I thought, well, immediately I'm switched off, but I'll listen for a bit longer. And he and others were basically indicating that I was being a bit of a coward and hiding behind my sofa. And that if my husband was that vulnerable, then he wasn't much use anyway. So he could just go in the attic and look after himself, and I should crack on with being a priest and put my parish and my people first, and put him second. And there was, I mean, he's extreme, but I am hearing something of that, not quite so stark language amongst conversations, maybe amongst clergy and laity, about, well, actually, you know, you are a priest, you should be in church, you should be out there, you should be walking around in your dog collar and your cassock. And if the shielder at home is that bad, that vulnerable, then they should just shield themselves, and you should be released to crack on and be a priest. And there's a kind of a level of guilt about, well, maybe I should mitigate the risk and go on, be out there again. I don't know whether that resonates with you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, there's a lot of guilt around. So, and I'm trying to do that thing of sort of, you know, a self-interrogation about, you know, sort of how I talk with, you know, my PCC, my church warden, standing committee, all that kind of thing, about what we are prepared to do as a community.
Yeah.
And then bring into the conversation, but I can't be the one who's doing that.
Yeah.
And that's really, really, I find that really, really difficult, because I think, well, you know, probably if I wasn't shielding, I would look to providing some space for, you know, individual prayer. And partly that's because, and I'm aware, I don't want it to be a clerical thing, but actually those of us who are used to church buildings, who are used to managing people in that space and, you know, order in all kinds of different ways, actually we are the best placed to do that kind of managing in this scenario. You know, my 70+ church warden is not the person who needs to be managing all that scenario. We don't know who's going to come through the doors, actually.
And this gives us a kind of permission and authority to say to somebody, no, you can't do that.
Exactly. So, you know, so I do feel that guilt that actually as a church we might not be able to do some stuff, and I guess within the shielding community, as it were, you know, it's worth having a wider church conversation about how our churches are going to be served in this time when opening is increasing.
It's rather like having a vacancy, but the priest is still in the vicarage.
Yeah, and you know, I think that you know, I mean, my congregation is great. They're not pressing anything at the moment, because a lot of them are in a medium risk category themselves and don't necessarily want to be in the church building, and there are other ways of doing it. But that's I guess what I see coming is that is going to change, but the shielding status may not change. So I know someone was saying that already in Scotland they've got their letters extending it to the end of July. You know, and so some of the strategy I can see being, you know, we can open wider if we keep these other people in for longer. So that's a particular strategy, isn't it? We, you know, we could have been in a sort of harder lockdown together for maybe a shorter time than shielders will be in lockdown, because you know, others are able to and allowed to go out and do their
trade-off. Now we are priests, we are people of Jesus, which is always a good thing, and the dog collar gives us away slightly, so I'm going to mention the G word, that's God. A friend I asked a while back, I said, you know, I did a very mature spiritual direction thing. I said, so where's God been in all this? And she was painfully honest, and she said, to be honest, God's nowhere near. I'm in a spiritual vacuum, there's just nothing. And I thought, wow, that's painfully honest, but that's, I don't know what to do. I said, well, can I sit with you in the vacuum for a little bit and see how it feels? So we did. So, and I thought that was a good question to ask everybody I'm interviewing, is where or if God is in this with you, and how that's been different.
It's good to say if, I think, and allow that, especially for priests, where, you know, we can feel a little bit like we have to be the one articulating where God is for everybody.
And God's always here, and it's always very reassuring.
Sure.
Not always.
No, quite. So I think it is a question that I want to sit with for a bit, and I was, I mean, right at the beginning, again, it was slightly different, and I was reminding people, because we were doing the prayer course. And one of the things that came out of that was the idea that when difficult stuff happens, it's rather than asking why God, to ask the where God, where is God in this, is actually a good way of seeing it. So, I have been sitting with that. And I think, there are so many aspects of this that are just really crap. And
quite a long list.
That I guess I can't even begin to articulate sometimes the sort of shopping list of things that I might want to ask God for, or think about what I need in this, because there are lots of complexities in the household beyond the physical complexity that's caused us to shield. I guess I think of my faith as being quite a sort of a life lived type of experiential way of understanding where God is. So outside of this experience, that's how I would think about faith. I don't necessarily think of God as suddenly popping in.
It's like going, hiya!
Yeah.
God's here.
And yes, of course that does happen, and I do have those moments, but it's mostly, and it has mostly been like this for quite a while. So that sort of sense of we're just kind of walking the walk, and God walks it with you, but that doesn't always feel a close walking, and and sometimes it feels kind of that God's quite absent. So I guess what I'm holding the sort of what I know of God, rather than expecting to feel the presence of God in this wonderful free space that I now have to think wonderful, glorious thoughts. I'm more busy now than I've ever been, I think. So I don't want God to get sort of squeezed out of that. But yeah, I think it's going to take a while for me to articulate where God is in this, and how God is experienced in it all.
Okay, so maybe a final wrap-up question, which might be easier or harder than where is God, and you might say, can we get back to the God question? Top tips for other shielders. There's quite a few out there who feel like they're on their own, there's only them, particularly clergy shielders.
Yes.
What things have you found that have sustained you, and like things like shopping tips or life tips, or just not going completely bonkers tips? What top tips have you got for other shielders that you think would be really helpful? I mean, Rachel suggested lots and lots of chocolate wholesale. Tiffany just told people when you're out on your first shielding walk, and a good mate called Helen, whereas Miranda went for I think for sort of time to find your natural rhythms, far more erudite and contemplative, which was great. So what would your top tips be?
Top tips. I'm not sure, I haven't gone completely bonkers, but there we go. I guess for me, what worked was, actually taking that walk. So I know that there's a bit of controversy around the science, around why did we suddenly get given that permission overnight, it seemed. But I think for me it was really helpful, and so and I saw Rachel's chat with you, and I thought, her friend who said, come on, we're gonna do this. So put in things things that is going to help you do what you need to do that walk without the anxiety kind of hitting the roof. Whether it's a face covering, whether it's I'm literally just going to walk over there and come back, and we'll do that for a week. Yeah, exactly. But also I was saying the other day that I miss spontaneous fun.
Okay.
So I feel like everything is scheduled.
Yeah.
So because we're in the home, and I mean the household stuff has absolutely trebled in terms of work, the work it takes to be in the home.
Yes.
So it's like, I know, my days feels very scheduled. It feels like I get up, I do my podcast, I think about Sunday, I I think about whether I have to record Compline. Then it's time to think about making the meal. So that might not be priestly work, but well, however you want to think about that. But you know, that takes time. So and I make this meal, and then we eat the meal, and that's all scheduled. And then we have scheduled family time, and we might play a game, but that's all scheduled. That's our scheduled fun for the day. So you know, and then I have to schedule. You know, well, I you know, walk around my garden for an hour and a half. You know, all this is scheduled. So I think maybe making sure that you have days that isn't how it works. It's not timetabled to within an inch of your life.
Yeah, find that spontaneity.
Because that household stuff has trebled, I think that for me has been more difficult.
Sure.
So yeah, just sitting down and not for no reason do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, so if your particular life has become frenetic, just find those moments of stillness.
Yeah, or just think, actually this is what I want to do, not because I have to do it, not because that's my only time to do it right now.
Yeah, because you want to. Fabulous. Still admiring the lovely blue of your study. I might have to go and get a paint chart and do something here. Although I rent, so I'm probably not allowed to. It's not like being in a vicarage where you can just slap it on and hope for the best of Magnolia afterwards. Jody, it's been fabulous to see you again. We haven't seen you for ages. It might have been General Synod last year we last saw each other. So it's been far too long.
Well, I'm not on General Synod. I have gone to General Synod a few times with Watch when I was on the National Committee of Watch.
Maybe
so I think people are used to seeing.
Gosh, that's even further away because they've been bishops for years now. Wow. Well, we mustn't leave it so long.
No, absolutely.
Jody, you're a treasure. I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you so much. You're a star.
All right.